Hello and welcome to the second episode of India Through Her Inscriptions. The first episode seemed to have reached a wider audience, and we are really thankful for the overwhelming support from your side. Hope you enjoyed learning parts of history, Indian history, that's generally forgotten. Before getting into today's inscription, we need to discuss two topics. The first one is music in temples. Temples, which were considered to be the residential quarters of the Almighty, had an opportunity to express one's devotion in all possible means. Music as a tool to speak to God, to connect with Him, and to speak to the common public about Him has been in vogue since time immemorial. Geeta Kainkaryam, as it is called, service to the Almighty through music. We have a wide collection of sacred literature, sacred hymns compiled during different times by the intellectually and supreme devotees, those who were blessed by God, on whom God shed His causeless mercy. Through the jnana that they gained, by the anugraham or the blessing on them, these noble souls went around singing the praise of Lord from one temple to another. To enable this, especially starting from around the 10th century, roughly during the last phase of the Pallavas, mostly during the imperial Chola period, the temple administration appointed trained men to sing these verses set to mellifluous music. They were called the Oduvars, a clan, a very specific trained profession that it is. Their services are more during special occasions, festivals, and days that are religiously or spiritually important. They have been remunerated mostly through paddy in the olden days. This community of Oduvars are those celebrated souls who till date shoulder the sacred hymns composed by the Bhakti saints, propagated through their music, which reaches us as not just music, not just sacred hymns, but also as Shaivite knowledge. The second topic is on being differently abled. Of late, there is a lot of discussion on making the society inclusive. Access restrictions, visual issues for visually impaired, people who have issues with free access everywhere. These are being discussed a lot. At international level, we are coming up with standards, codes that are to be followed in public spaces, common areas, making all sorts of activities accessible and possible to all kinds of people. Nothing should be a barricade to someone who wishes to pursue. Think about the days when being differently abled or physically challenged 1,000 years back. The kind of society then, across the globe, what would have probably been the way with which these people were looked upon? We can assure that it wouldn't have been at least as comfortable as it is being made today. So, this inscription is also going to deal a bit about how differently abled people, visually impaired, were treated roughly 850, 900 years back, around the 12th century. Two topics, one on temple musicians and the other on being differently abled. How does this get together? Well, that's where our inscription for today comes in. To spot the inscription for the day, we're going to travel to a beautiful little town, a sacred town in Tamilnadu called Thiruamattur. Situated amongst lush green paddy fields, the temple till date is a delight. This is an hour and a half, 2 hours drive from Chennai. Right on the highway, you will definitely not miss it. Dedicated to Shiva as Abhirameshwara, this temple proves out to be one of the finest example for imperial Chola architecture. The inscription is from the times of Kulothunga II, 12th century, the time when Shaivite religion was extremely popular. Here in Thiruvamattur, he wanted to employ people to serve the Lord through their music. He wanted to employ Oduvars who could render the chaste Tamil compositions of the Nayanmar saints in front of the deity during different parts of a day's service. Here in this temple, when there was a need to appoint Oduvars to sing for the Lord, there were not one or two, but 16 members, more like a choir, who were appointed. Well, that is very common too. When the big temple at Tanjavur was built, Rajaraja appointed close to 400 dancers for the temple. So here, 16 isn't a big number. What makes it so special then? Well, it was a representation to support people who were visually impaired. So the king chose to appoint 16 Oduvars who were differently abled, as in visually challenged. So here, a group of 16 visually challenged people were chosen to be employed in the temple, trained in Tevaram, initiated by the Acharyas into Shaivite practices, were employed here in Thiruvamattur. Well, that's very interesting to note. We talk a lot about being inclusive, a society to be inclusive, to people with different limitations. Here, 1,000 years back, we have a king who is ruling major parts of India and much beyond that too, who had time, interest, and benevolence to accept a proposal to help 16 visually impaired people to be trained in music, initiated into the religion, and being appointed in the temple. Two people are identified as Kankattuvar, the ones who are going to act as the vision for these Oduvars who are visually impaired. They are going to be appointed, brought into the payrolls too. Their duty is going to be to ensure that the Oduvars are walked to the temple every day, made to stand in the place where they've got to render the compositions, help perform the service, brought back home safely. Kankattuvar is how they are referred to in the inscription. Those who acted as the vision to these Oduvars. Being differently abled, the people there do not just want your kindness. There is a little more. Dignity and self-respect is what is going to actually help them feel being a part of the society. That is what I think has been achieved best through this wonderful act of the king. Dignity and self-respect of these Oduvars were ensured by identifying an alternative field where they were better abled, brought in, trained, and given an actual profession with some minor support, so they had the satisfaction and the feel of belonging to this society. The difference, the odds, were probably diluted and forgotten and lived a life that which is remembered 900 odd years later. Indian history hosts so many such stories, tales from the forgotten past, that which is applicable till date, the lessons from which is valid till date. The learnings can help us march through a path that which is actually sensible. Let's be proud to learn from these cases that which is exclusive to India. Through this, we learn the history of India. To be informed about more such interesting information through our inscriptions, to learn the history of India through temple inscriptions, please do subscribe to our channel. We look forward to your patronage. Thank you and hope to meet you soon with another equally interesting inscription through which the history of India can be learned better. Thank you.